So your test is going to be in two parts. So part one is going to feature your basics of the shape and your factoring and your formula. Okay, so here is part one. We're going to call this your basic stuff. So transformations. Yes. 2 parts. We're going to have a test over 2 days. Yeah. So part one is going to be your basic stuff. Is it not mashing? Do you have 2 attached together?
I don't think so. That wasn't the first page of mine.
Oh. Okay, ready? So this is the normal one. Do you remember what the normal one looks like? Just starts right in the middle at the origin and looks like that up, right? That's normal. Okay, so tell me what happens to this. So you can get your calculator out if you need to. Some of you might already predict. This is not matching.
No.
What is yours say at the top? Okay, so I'm looking for 4 answers here. The negative did something, the 2 did something, this 1 did something, the 6 did something. I need 4 maneuvers. Okay, I'm going to give you some options. Has this thing moved? Left, right, up, down? Has it flipped? Has the arms of it gotten skinnier or wider by any means? Okay, so what do you think this negative caused it to do? Any predictions what the negative did? It made it flip, right? Any predictions what the 2 did? It made the arms of it become more narrow. And which way did it go with the 1? Left, right, or up or down? Can you see? It moved right. The vertex is at 1. And then it's also at up. Right? You can use your calculator to see where your vertex is, so it has moved right and up. Okay, there's the flip, and it did get skinnier. Okay, let's go graph this. Go ahead, type it in. So here is my rough sketch, and I'm letting you know that there are going to be 4 important points. 3 intercepts, 1 vertex, those are all important. Would that be where yours are hitting? Okay, so properties. So this is part of your basic stuff, properties. So it's going to open upward. And before I graphed it, I knew that because there was only a 2 multiplier, not a negative. The coordinate of the vertex. So can you get me this coordinate here by doing a minimum, calculating the minimum. So get your calculator functions out, and you can go second, calculate, minimum, and left and right. Okay, we have an axis of symmetry, which means if I could cut it right down the middle. That's the axis of symmetry, symmetric. So I need you to make a line with an equation. So do you remember what you have to do? An equation, you have to have something equal to something. You need x equals to make it up and down, because y equals goes flat. So x equals goes up and down. And what x value do you go right through? Should you pick -3? Okay, x-intercepts, so there's 2 of them. And I need you to calculate that with your device. So you're doing the second calculate, you're going to be doing the 0. So you need to have all of these tools mastered. There's 2 spots. Okay, so those are the features I've been using. I did a minimum feature there. I did a 0 feature on that one for the calculator. How do we look? Numbers matching? Obviously, please make sure you're following along. That's important in your calculator stuff. Okay, y-intercept. So now I'm finding this coordinate. So what do you know about that coordinate, anybody? 0, comma, something, right? So I'm actually just going to go trace 0, enter. Because I'm just going to tell my mouse to go. I can tell my mouse if I know the x value, I can go anywhere I want. Okay, domain. You have to think about left to right. So what's the left to the right situation? -infinity to +infinity. Range, you're going to have to think low to high. So what's the low to the high going to be? Looks like the lowest you would ever go is a bottom value, but then up top you keep going high, right? Sometimes that can be flipped. If the parabola is flipped, right, you can go from -infinity to a height. Okay, so on this one, what's the symmetric point to -1, 1. So this is the coordinate -1, 1. Where would its partner, symmetric partner, be? This is its symmetric partner. Okay, what do you already know about that coordinate? You already know something about it. It's also at a height of 1 because they're straight, flat across from each other, right? Does anybody have a tool for our calculator here? What are we going to do? What do they have the same value of? I'm going to do a y2 line at 1. So do a y2, because I know that they're both at that height of 1. So where is it? Okay, so give me an intersection, right? -5? Okay, but the question said a point, so make sure you write it as a coordinate, x comma y. This is a point. If I just said where, then you would say -5. But because I said a coordinate, a point, you have to write it like that. Okay, what do you do when I ask, what's the height at when x equals 2? So we would be like somewhere up there when x equals 2. What is the height? That's what I'm asking you. What do you do in your calculator features? What do you do as a calculator feature? I just kind of talked about this. If you know the x, what do you do if you know x? You just tell your mouse to go there. So how do you tell your mouse to go there? Trace 2. Just tell your mouse. Oh, I'm going to also delete that other line because I don't need that in there anymore. $43. Is that what anybody got? 43. Okay, there is another button that gets you there. So as soon as you hit trace, it activates your mouse, and then I told you could just go to enter. If you want also, under your calculation menu, that's just called any kind of value, but it does the same thing. It just brings up x equals 2. Okay, it's the same thing, value or just trace, tell it to go there. It does the same thing. At what positive x value is the height 100? So if you are looking for a height of 100, what do you do if you want to know where that is happening? What's your strategy? Then you're doing a y2. So do you get the picture? If you know x, just tell it to go to x. If you know y, you do a y2. Does that make sense? If you know x, tell it to go there and figure out the y. If you know y, do a y2 and intersect. And it says a positive x value. So you're wanting that x value, and your window is going to have to change, right? So under my window, I already know I'd like to see past 100. So I'm going to go to 125, and I'm going to make each tick mark 10. there's the intersection I want. $4.31. Where does this equation equal this equation? What would you do to solve this? Where does this equal that? You would do a y1, y2 stuff and an intersection, right? So that's your strategy. Where does things equal? Type them both in, let your calculator do everything for you. So provide a quick sketch. So this is what my screen kind of looks like. And then I think you're going to have 2 answers here because it doesn't say anything beyond that. Okay, so all that is classified as basics. Okay, I might ask you a few more basic questions like this. Is it a quadratic? Yes or no? So I'm going to write something and you tell me if it's a quadratic equation or not. Is that a quadratic equation? Yes or no? I see some of you shaking your head. No. Why not? It doesn't have x squared in it, right? Is this a quadratic equation? Yes or no? The answer is no. Why? Because there's actually a cubed in it, so it's not quadratic anymore, it's cubic, because that's the boss. Yes or no? That one is a quadratic. Quadratic, yes or no? It is a quadratic. Why? Because you got to visualize foiling it, and if you foil it, it makes a x squared, right? Yes or no that it's a quadratic? It is not. And the reason is, if I foil it, it would actually make it x to a 4th degree. So now that's not a quadratic anymore. Okay, so that's kind of a test question, just a yes or no. Does this look like a quadratic equation or not? So you're just looking for if it had the boss x squared. So if this one again had an x squared, but this was the boss. Okay. I also might ask you, what is the a value? So for instance, this was a quadratic. What's the a value? What's the value for a in this equation? -2 is the a value because it's the slope. It'll open down. It's the x squared multiplier. Okay, so that was basics, and then the other part 1 is the factoring and the formula. Okay, so on your test, basics, factoring, and formula. That's all day 1. Okay, so factoring, we have our 4 styles, so know your styles. Simple, complex, trinomials, GCFs, difference of squares. Okay, so this one I'm going to do a simple trinomial because it has trinomial, 3 parts, simple because it has a 1x squared. So I'm looking for multiples of 30. I need something times something to make 30. And then it needs to make an 11 if I add them together. Can you think of multiples of 30? 5 times 6 minus minus. Does that multiply to plus 30? Add to negative 11? Okay, you, on your test, you have your calculator. I'm not going to take this thing away from you. What could you do? Type that in. Double check. Your thing's going to look like that. 5 and at 6. Okay. Next one. What would you do on this? So it's not a trinomial. That's out because there's no 3 parts. Did you think it's that difference of squares one? And you're supposed to have kind of a refresher of all 4 of these on your cheat sheet, right? Very helpful if you can do that. So 2 brackets. What times what makes the 9 part? Should we do 3x times 3x? Has to be the same. What times what makes 25? 5 times 5. And what do you do with the signs? 1's plus, 1's minus. The solution is to do the opposite and divide, so negative 5/3 and positive 5/3. Okay, on your calculator, if you were to do this and you checked your answer, you would get 1.67. That's what your calculator would do, but you can verify that. You can just go, well, what is 5 divided by 3? Oh yeah, 1.67. Good, it matches. Okay, the next, not a trinomial. There's only 2 parts to it. Which style would you call this one? GCF. Okay, so what am I going to take out of this and this term? What do they both have in them? think number and letters. What's the most number part you can take out? 5. What's the most letter you can take out? X. Okay, so 5x times what gets me to that? 5x times what gets me to that? So again, you still have your calculator with you. You can double check your work. Did you factor correctly? But I still have to see your factoring work. So if I put this into my calculator type, I'm noticing it intersects at 0 and at 4. Okay, and then the last style, we have 4 styles. This one is the complex trinomial because there's the 3 parts and it starts with not a 1x squared. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about my FOIL. So I'm going to do, what's the FLA? First times last is 12. I need to produce an 8 as well. So I need to multiply to the 12 and I need to add to the 8. So my FOIL components need to be a 2x and a 6x. Okay, so let's break this down. What are all the options here for F? What can I do for the L? Okay, so are you looking for puzzle? This is the puzzle part, the fun part. You need something to get you to a 2x and a 6x. Can you find some partnerships that are going to do that? 2x and a 6x. 2x and a 6x. Okay, so brackets 2x times 2x, front. First times first, boom, 4x squared. FOIL. So what am I setting up here? The 2x needs to go with a 1, and this 2x needs to go with a 3. Do you see your FOIL components? 2x outside, 6x inside, that's my 8x. The last times the last is 3. Okay, and then we are going to go opposite divide. Opposite divide. Okay, here we just did opposite because there's just one x. We don't need to do the divide by 1. Okay, verify with your calculator. Do you guys know how to do that? That's okay? So verifying with your calculator, everybody knows you're just finding the zeros, right? Okay, that'll work out. Obviously, these are fractions. Your calculator will give you a decimal. You just see if they match. Okay, number 5 is the quadratic formula. So this will be on a paper. I will give you a paper that has that on it. It's a formula. Anything formula related will always be provided for you. So that's on your sheet for your exam. I would have that on there for you. Okay, so the first thing is I see some flipping. Am I matching still? It's okay? This is good? You just found spot. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go, what is the A, the B, the C? So A is how many x squareds. First thing is the x squared, so that's 3. B is how many x's, -8. And C is the number. You guys all know that I could trick you by, I might write you like y equals -7 minus 8x plus 3x squared, right? Or whatever. I might trick you. Okay, so pay attention in case I don't write it in the order. Okay, here we go. X equals opposite B. So this is going to be +8. What do you get if you square anything? What's the result? Positive. So I guess besides 0, but so this is going to be +64. What's wrong with this person doing this? What's wrong with that? Yee. Not the right answer. This is how they should have typed it. But just know, always, you can't be negative if you square something. That's wrong. So +64 minus 4 bracket 3 bracket -7. So you should go 8 plus minus the square root of something over 6. Okay, can you go into your calculator and literally just type this in for me? Just that part. I got 148 on that. Yay, nay, matched? Okay, so this is how I'm going to be typing it into my calculator. Okay, your calculator is a brackety calculator, so you're going to have to do a double bracket in that spot. Does everybody see it? Because these calculators are brackety. Okay, now there's a trick on my calculator that makes me do things faster. I'm not going to type it all again. So it's in there. Here's what I'm going to do. Second enter. Push second enter. And it brings it back on your screen. And then I'm going to go to the plus sign. Change it to a subtraction sign. So did you find that button? Just go second enter and it brings up something if you want to edit it. Your last step. Okay, and then everybody knows that you can go back to your calculator. You can find the zeros. Do they match? This one will be decimals, so just see if they match. You can check your work, okay? Okay, last question, and then we'll stop. So tell me what A is, what B is, and what C is. A, B, C. Just tell me what each one would be. So for A, I got a -1, because that's how many x squareds there are, a 2, and a -5. Okay, so here's the formula. Opposite B, so we had a 2, so I'm going to write -2. Plus minus the square root of. What do you get if you do B squared? 2 squared is 4. Subtract 4 times -1 times -5. Okay, so now I need you to calculate this part. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm done. Why am I done? What do you think about square rooting negative numbers? Can't do it. So what should I write about the x-intercepts? What should I finalize as an answer here? There are no solutions to this. There's no x-intercepts. And verify this with graphing. So look at what happened when I graphed this equation. I've already put it in there, and I graph it. Look at that drawing. What do you think about the x-intercepts? Where do you think it's ever going to cross? Never, right? It's never going to cross. Right? There's no intercepts along that line, ever. Okay? So there we go. We verified it with visual. We verified it with math. Okay, so that concludes day 1. So what do you have? You have your basics, and then you have your factoring and your formula. Okay, that's day 1. Day 2, you're going to have making equations, and you're going to have word problems.